Hi, my name is Michelle Thomas Preka, and my signature assignment is on the article Prevalence of Alzheimer's Disease in Individual U.S. States and the District of Columbia. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disease that destroys memory and other important mental functions. Alzheimer's is becoming an increasingly prevalent and costly disease in the United States. In the article Prevalence of Alzheimer's Disease in Individual U.S. States and the District of Columbia, a comprehensive study was conducted to estimate the medical and federal cost of care for persons with Alzheimer's disease, and that number is projected to triple by 2050. The growing number of cases will quantify the burden of Alzheimer's disease on individual U.S. states. State government plays an important role in affecting the lives of people with Alzheimer's disease, their families, and the healthcare system. The system as it is not perfect and is stretched to its maximum potential. So how will government and healthcare system support change over time according to its population size and age structure? Alzheimer's disease has a gradual onset, and for this reason, half of older people with Alzheimer's disease do not have a documented diagnosis. It would be extremely difficult to devise a mandatory reporting requirement for this condition, but it is important to recognize the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and its predicted growth because it is the individual states who coordinate, administer, fund, and regulate many key services and programs for people with Alzheimer's disease. So knowing and preparing for the influx to come of this illness is going to be for the better of these individuals and for the state. So only Medicaid covers long-term care, but many people do not qualify for this program. This article does state that Medicare does not cover long-term care. Individuals who do not qualify for Medicaid can attain eligibility by sufficiently depleting their assets, which they can accomplish readily because of the high cost of care for people with Alzheimer's dementia. In 2008 and 2013, it was approximately $92,000 per year for the cost of people to have a private room in a skilled nursing facility, and this is for people with Alzheimer's disease. Another study said that in 2008, Alzheimer's disease or dementia were approximately $47,000. That's nearly 20 times greater than payments of services delivered to people with other medical issues. So it's quite costly. Alzheimer's has a gradual onset, as I mentioned, but the study was conducted by estimating the number of adults aged 65 years and older and above with Alzheimer's dementia in each U.S. state and the District of Columbia by applying the annual Alzheimer's disease incidence and Alzheimer's mortality hazard identified in a systematically evaluated community to each state's population, accounting for each state's age structure, mortality pattern, and other demographics. The article obtained Alzheimer's disease data from the Chicago Health and Aging Project, that's the CHAP, and that is a population-based study that was begun in 1993 with a census of individuals over 65 years old living in a geographically defined area of Chicago. And from the CHAP data, which is a study that was approved by the Rush University Medical Center Institutional Review Board, it calculated the separate annual incidence estimated for 432 groups defined by single year of age, sex, 2 race groups, and 3 educational groups. And then participants were re-interviewed in 3-year cycles, with each data collection cycle consisting of an in-home interview of all participants and a clinical evaluation for Alzheimer's dementia. From there, the CHAP data collected separate annual incidence for 432 groups, defined by, again, age, and that was age between 65 and 100 years old, sex, 2 race groups, and 3 educational groups, and then they calculated it. The result of the study proved that between 2010 and 2025, every U.S. state is expected to double and triple their digits of percentile in the number of adults with Alzheimer's that are above 65 years old. So double and triple digits. The largest predicted increase is expected to happen in California, Florida, and Texas, and those are the states that presently have the largest number of people with Alzheimer's disease as it is. In conclusion, the estimates of state-specified Alzheimer's disease prevalence in 2010 that were computed using the projected 2010 population data were a little bit larger, by an average of about 3%, than the estimate computed using the data from the 2010 census. And when the 2010 census data was used to compute the proportion of the total population with Alzheimer's dementia, the estimates were similar to those computed with the projected population data. These results indicated that the number of adults 65 years and older with Alzheimer's disease in all U.S. states except the District of Columbia will increase substantially by 2015, which we are now seeing. Most alarming, though, is that according to these numbers, the population of adults with Alzheimer's disease will increase at a rate that exceeds the increase of total population. So although many states have a plan for dealing with the anticipated increase of Alzheimer's disease, there are some states that will not be prepared to deal with this growing issue. The hypothesis, I think, was supported, but a definitive solution for dealing with the inflation of Alzheimer's disease was not specified, which left the reader, like myself, asking, okay, great, we have proof that there's going to be an increase in the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, but what do we do about it? What do states do to prepare for it? And the article was informative. I think it brought a lot of serious issues to light. I did find it very interesting that Medicare does not pay for long-term care, but also Medi-Cal does, and I didn't know how to qualify for that, if it ever came to my loved one, but it didn't go into detail about that, so I had to do my own little research about that, and as it stated, if you have funds, then you have to spend them down towards your care until you meet the criteria, or the low-income criteria for qualifying for Medi-Cal. And because that's state to state, then it's not all the same numbers for qualifying. You have to go through individual states. So I think it was important that this article was written. The strongest point I think the article made is how the financial burden of Alzheimer's disease affects everyone, taxpayers, residents, family members of people with Alzheimer's disease. But the illness does not just affect immediate family. It affects all of us, especially if at some point these people are going to need, state-funded Medi-Cal. Then that's part of the taxpayer, and it's important for us to know where these funds will be going. I think it's a very unfortunate illness. In order to qualify for Medi-Cal, families need to meet the low-income criteria, as I mentioned. The limitations were in the evidence-based study, which at the end were not surprising, but did support the writer's point. So the writer's point is that there's a prevalence, we're going to make a study, we're going to make an average, find out how many people there are with Alzheimer's disease, and estimate how many are projected to have Alzheimer's disease in the next 10 years to 30 years, and that point was proven. But it was lacking. What can we do to possibly prevent it? What can we do to prepare for it? The limitations, again, were in the evidence-based study, which at the end didn't really prove anything to me. I chose this article because of the introduction captured my attention. It was clear and descriptive, talked about Alzheimer's and how unfortunate it is and how it affects everybody, and how it's increasing, and certainly you don't want to be one that ends up with Alzheimer's disease, and you don't want to see any of your loved ones with it. As I continued to read the article, though, I got a little bit lost in the statistical facts. It was a lot of numbers, a lot of percentages that weren't really clear to me. The Chicago, the CHAP was a great study, but it seemed to have very specific demographics that they looked into. And as previously mentioned, there's many undocumented cases of Alzheimer's disease because it's so gradual that it may not be detected until it's pretty advanced. The conclusion of the article proved its point. Alzheimer's is prevalent in the United States and the District of Columbia, and a plan must be developed by every state to prepare for the mounting cost associated with the disease. The article was well written and easy to read, except for all the numbers sometimes. But it had a predictable statistical finding, and I would have liked to just have more information, provide more resources for myself to look into. But overall, I thought it was a very good article. These limitations that were described and the discrepancies underscore that the exact number of individuals with Alzheimer's disease in a given state is an estimate. So one guided by reasonable but imperfect assumption and data. So it does admit, this is from the article, it does admit that it was a guided study, but it wasn't a perfect assumption of what's going to happen in the future. Nevertheless, these uncertainties are small in comparison with the estimated trajectories that will substantiate an increase in the burden of Alzheimer's disease on U.S. states. So that was the article. I did enjoy it, and I do recommend people read it because I think it's important, but it kind of left me wanting more. So I think I'm going to do a little bit more reading and studying about Alzheimer's disease, how to, educate myself on it, preventative measures, and what the state can do. Like, what can California, who is one of the states that's expected to have an increase of Alzheimer's disease prevalence, what can they do to prepare for this in the future? Thank you, and that's it.